Hi, my name is Martin or Ms Elsa, and I am a non-binary asexual drag artist.
I spent 2 weeks of July traveling through the Baltic countries, and in Tallinn, Estonia, I met up with Martin, or as their drag character is called, Ms Elsa. And this is how they identify.
I identify as non-binary, as they them pronouns, and in general I lie on the ace spectrum, more so on the asexual spectrum. Not so sure about the aromantic spectrum.
We're getting back to their ace identity soon, but let's first listen to how they figured out that they were non-binary.
I understood it about like 2 to 3 years ago. When we all went into lockdown, I have more time to fully understand about who I am, and that was the time when I started doing drag. I was in a dark place with myself, like I fully didn't understand myself or accept myself. I didn't like the person who I was looking at. I was super closeted in a sense that I was afraid to express my maybe femininity and to express my sexuality in a sense. And when I started doing drag, I found this femininity, and I found a way how to incorporate into my lifestyle, and how I wasn't afraid to use products that were labeled as feminine, like shampoos and simple stuff, but I was so afraid to use them before. And then I was thinking about my gender, and it was confusing at times because I didn't understand. I didn't want to be male, but I also didn't feel like a female. And that time I met a lot of other queer people, and I was opened up to the concept of non-binary and being gender fluid. And I understood this is exactly where I lie, and this is exactly who I am. I had misconceptions about the term before, in my mind it was always associated with being androgynous, and that was not the case. When I understood that was when I fully accepted being non-binary, and I found that the term applied to me.
And this is also around the time that they figured out that they're on the asexual spectrum.
I just understood that I never felt the need to be sexually active with someone. I found people attractive, but when it would come down to actually being intimate with them, I didn't want that, and it wasn't necessary for me. I didn't enjoy it, and I realized that the times where I felt I needed intimacy was the times when I felt the loneliest, and these were the times when I felt I needed validation and attention for me, and I just wanted to feel like somebody cared about me. But that went away when I met up with my friends. The more social I was with my friends and my family, the less likely I felt I needed to hook up with someone. This realization was so freeing. And then I understood the term as asexuality, and I researched it and realized that the whole sexuality is also a spectrum. Asexuality doesn't mean that you hate sex. It's just that you don't need it, you don't want it, it's not an essential part in your life. And it can also vary at times. Sometimes you can be absolutely sex repulsed and you don't want even to see it. And sometimes you may feel aroused, sometimes you may feel you want to be with someone. Yeah, it's very fluid.
It is often difficult for asexual and aromantic people to figure this out about themselves.
It's really hard to understand that because we live in an allosexual world where like everything around us is always relationships and sex and intimacy, and we're like constantly fed the idea that in order to be happy you have to be with someone, and that someone always has to be in a romantic way. When I realized that I actually don't need it, that's when I realized that the people I need in my life are my friends, and I am actually happy with them, and I don't have to be in an intimate relationship with them in order to be happy. This understanding has taken off so much pressure from me, because before that I was constantly looking like, oh, like, is this the right person? Like, maybe this person will want to pursue something. Like, oh, I have to mingle with that person. I have to flirt with that person. I was always like thinking about how I looked, and I didn't want to like scare off potential suitors because they didn't like my body, or like they didn't like the way I looked. And I was always like constantly thinking about like, okay, how I sit, like, is some of my fat showing, or like maybe my thighs look too big, and it had so much pressure onto me. And when I finally realized like I didn't need like intimacy, it has been so much fear, and in a weird way it has allowed me to be more open and accepting with my body, and be more sexual and show off my body, and wear clothes I would have never worn back then. Understanding that I am asexual, that I am non-binary, that I'm a drag artist, all of these things have made me free. They have set me free from any societal boxes, and the biggest boxes I have made for myself. I have broken through them, and I can finally like be free and not care about other people and what they think of me. And yes, it's freedom.
And Martin's non-binary identity can be seen through their drag.
I can see a lot of it coming through in my drag, that I don't aspire to be like a super feminine creature. My drag is very much like horror-based and creature-based, and all of these monsters who are like genderless. And yes, I sometimes may present as more feminine, but overall, like, Ms Elsa is a very like fluid being.
And their asexuality also influences their drag.
Sex and sexuality isn't like the main focus of my performances or character in itself. When it's done in a grotesque way, or like in a funny way. I don't aspire to be like very sexual and like desirable.
Martin also wants to share some of the misconceptions that are going around about aromanticism and asexuality.
It's hard to be on the aromantic asexual spectrum, because there are a lot of queer people and a lot of straight people who don't think it exists. There are a lot of queer people who don't think it should be associated with queerness. It's really hard, like in general, like to see people who dismiss it with asexuality. People often think like, oh, you're just a prude, you haven't met the right person. Oh, you're just super self-conscious, like you're not happy with yourself. Or it's because you're mental health, it's because you take medication, it's because you have low libido, it's because you have like trauma, past trauma. And yes, some of these things may apply to some people, but it's not the defining thing about us. And asexual people are very different from each other. There are many asexual people who can participate in intimate relationships with people. There are some people who don't want it at all. There are asexual people who can be in like straight relationships. There are asexual people who can still be like homo-romantic and feel the attraction to the same sex. And with aromantic people, there can be aromantic people who can experience like intimate relationships and have them, but they don't just feel the romantic attraction, and there are people who experience both. It's very wide.
One reason that people generally don't really understand what aromanticism and asexuality means might be that it's not properly represented in the media.
We don't have like aromantic or asexual portrayals in media, and if there is so little of it. Like the first time I saw an asexual character was when I was the Sex Education on Netflix. And this was just for one episode, but it was still like really touching. And I know there's asexual representation in BoJack Horseman, but in general, it's there are many like characters that could be seen as asexual, but when a person expresses their queerness, they're automatically thought as being gay. Like the first example that comes into my mind is like in the Stranger Things. The character Will Byers. People are like, oh yeah, he's gay. Like he's definitely gay, he's sensitive, he's artistic, and oh, that means that he's gay. It's always the case like, but what if he's asexual?
And Martin thinks that a better representation would not only be beneficial for people on the aspex.
It would be like more healthy in general if in media we would lessen the focus on like being romantic with someone, or like the character's happiness comes from being in a relationship or having the fairy tale ending where they get married and they have children and everything is cool, and like, no, you can live your life in a totally different way and still be happy and have your fairy tale ending. If we stop doing that, we would have many more happier people that don't have the pressure on finding their right soulmate, and that applies to every person, not only asexual or aromantic people. Like you always hear from your like relatives and your parents like, oh, but when are you bringing home a girl or a boy? And like, it's like, isn't necessary.
To wrap up, let's remind ourselves of how it felt for Martin when they found themselves.
Finding myself, I'm not saying I fully know who I am, like it's philosophically, it's not possible. But the place I'm in right now, the terms I identify with and the discoveries I've made along the way, they have set me free from any like doubts and fears and all these complexes that have bothered me. And right now I can fully say that I can truly be the person I want to be and move towards that goal if I'm suddenly realize that I'm not in a few years. So yeah, I'm free and I'm happy.
If you enjoyed watching that video, please like, comment, subscribe and share the video. I really appreciate you showing your love in that way. If you also want to support the channel financially, that's possible via Patreon, but really no pressure. See you next time!